Okay, everybody, welcome back. So, got a little bit of a setup going here. Checking my stream over here in Instagram to the left of me, to the right of you guys. And yeah, sorry for the delay in putting out some stuff. I've been testing a lot of things lately. Really just looking for the right setup, adding some software, making sure that I try to do this the best that I can. So, a couple little things that I've found here, and pardon me, I'm going to look down as I'm looking at my computer trying to do some cool tricks here. Adam, hey, Adam on Instagram. By the way, folks, I am running Instagram, but if you check out YouTube or Facebook, check out my pages there. You can make comments. I can actually show your comments in the live stream. So if you get a chance to do that, definitely do. So if you're checking me out on Facebook and YouTube, you can see I've added some lower thirds, and I'm actually going to be showing some of that for my job at Dallaterra, and I'm going to be talking a little bit of wine tonight. So, complete amateur. You guys probably remember a couple episodes back had Adam on the podcast / live stream because I'm transitioning to that now. And Adam was great, had a lot of really good insights on the Piedmont area. And I've picked a wine tonight to taste, and then we're going to talk about some stuff that's going on as this whole COVID thing just continues to roll on. And I'm really hoping that we start to get back. There's some rumors now that we're going to start to slowly get back to work, so that's kind of nice. And I know there's a lot of people out there who are hurting. This weekend, we actually did our Easter dinner as a takeout with one of our local restaurants here in the Atlanta metro area. So that was great. Yeah, I know I shouldn't be touching my face during times like this, but I've pretty much been in the house for days now. So with the exception of yesterday when I went out and grabbed dinner. Anyways, hands are washed though. All right. So anyway, yeah, definitely check out Facebook and YouTube. I know you guys are, but my Instagram friends over here to the left of me are not. So guys, check that out. I would love to see you. Michael Mandavi, Family Winery, saying hello. That is awesome because I actually just for my Instagram friends over here. Look, I'm drinking from my folio glass. So I hope they enjoy that. And for the viewers at home, this is Folio Fine Wine Partners winery that I started with in the Napa area, and worked with Michael Mondavi and the Mondavi family, and great folks over there. So shout out to you guys, and thanks for checking out the YouTube, or I'm sorry, the Instagram feed. That is awesome. So this will be a much better experience, by the way, if you check this out on YouTube, because I'm going to be throwing up some graphics here. So today, what I am drinking is a Vietti Perbacco. This is a 2016, and I have to say it is really great. It is from the Vietti family, and throwing up a little graphic there. Wonderful wine, wonderful people as well. And I do have to say, it's one of the things that's kind of fun about working in this industry. What I find is that the families who run these wineries, and especially the family-run wineries, are especially just kind, generous, nice folks. And I've probably found that in my experience all throughout. Not to throw anyone under the bus, I found my experiences are probably a little bit different with some of the bigger corporate wineries, if you will. I kind of find that I myself personally have come from a world where I worked in this big global corporate behemoth of a company. And it was a great company. I learned a lot. Many of you know who listen to the podcast. That was with Coca-Cola. And, Coca-Cola is a good company. I mean, it's a great place to learn a lot of stuff. But since I've been away from the big corporate wheel for a while, what I've really found is that I really love working for smaller organizations where your contributions, I think, are a little bit more valued. And overall, it's just, it's just really a much better experience. And again, for me personally, still have a lot of friends who are working at Coke and they love it. And that is fantastic. I mean, definitely pursue the things that you love doing, and wherever you're happy, that is awesome. And quite honestly, right now, if you're working right now, that is fantastic, because unfortunately, tremendous amount of people who are not, and so that's no fun. So let's get back to the Vietti Perbacco, and I'm going to go ahead and throw up a little screen grab here of what the wine looks like. So if you are interested in grabbing a bottle, this is the label and what it looks like. I definitely encourage you guys to check that out. Threw up a little, I should say, a little early there, the screen grab that I had from the Vietti family. But for those folks who are checking this out online, I'm going to go ahead and dip my head over to the side here and blow this up a little bit. A little bit of information that you can find about the Vietti family and the wine itself. And I would say definitely check it out. You can find information about Vietti and all the wonderful wines that Dallaterra has at dallaterra.com. And they have a lot of really good information and resources there. This, by the way, is delicious. We're going to be having some pasta with red sauce tonight. So I'm going to save most of this for dinner, but it's hard not to have some now. It's got a just a very lovely, rich, kind of fruity flavor. One of the things that I tend to find with Italian wine versus California, kind of your, a lot of my friends are just kind of general wine drinkers, right? And so when you have something like a California Cabernet, they tend to be very, fruit filled, very bold. And Italian wines are much different than that. But this one, the Perbacco, kind of has, it is reminiscent to me of a little bit more of a Cabernet, even though it's 100% Nebbiolo. And I'm sure there are some wine geeks out there who know a heck of a lot more about this than I do, and can probably tell me the reason why that is. But I don't have an expert on the line with me today. But hopefully we'll have some in the future. I have some wonderful colleagues, and I'm going to bug them to join me in these kind of wrap-up things that I do in the evenings. I'm going to try and make this a little bit more of a regular occurrence. But also, just real quick, just to show Luca and Elena Corrado Vietti, wonderful folks, and I've had the opportunity to talk with them a few times through some conference calls. Have not had the opportunity to meet them yet in person, though many of my colleagues have, and like many of the other families that we work with, they're just wonderful, wonderful people. So nice to be having their product. So let's dive a little bit into non-wine stuff. And something I've been thinking about a lot lately is kind of the state of the business. Like what is business going to be like when we get back to opening things up? I mentioned earlier, some of the governors are kind of forming this coalition where they're going to talk about how to open back up and get back into business, which I think is great. Of course, we want to do it cautiously, and we want to make sure that we preserve as much health as we can for people. But one of the things that I'm really kind of concerned about as I think about, there's a couple things. I'm going to start with retail. There were a lot of chains out there, retail chains, department stores, if you will, that were already kind of on the brink. Sears, J.C. Penney was on the ropes. Sears was pretty much, this is going to put the nail in the coffin for them. But there's a lot of other retailers out there. Macy's for years has kind of had ups and downs as they've kind of limped along. There's a lot of retailers out there who I'm really concerned whether or not those retailers are going to be coming back. Forever 21 was already in the stages of closing stores and going bankrupt. And, as I think about the retail landscape, it's going to be very interesting for a couple of reasons. One, retail is kind of this business where everything is set up in a supply chain to move, as most retailers are. You're not really set up to warehouse things, but you might remember before I talked about kind of this backup that happens in the supply chain world and when we have disruptions, right? And so this is a major, unlike the bust in 2008, where we saw credit seize up, a lot of people lose their jobs, there was inventory that slowed, but never really this kind of full-on stop that we have today. And what we have going on is in department stores, in hundreds of department stores around the United States, there are seasonal items that really should have moved by now that haven't. And so what is going to be interesting is, number one, how many retailers are going to make it through this crunch where everything just kind of seized up. Going backward, when you think about the clothing manufacturers and the materials makers and the people who sew items and all that stuff globally, how is this going to affect the seasonality of things? I mean, if you think about it, we were just coming out of winter as this thing hit. And in many parts of the country, it was still cold. And now as we're kind of looking forward to warm seasons coming in, we have entire retailers who are still holding on to, late winter inventory. What are we going to see when all of that opens up? All right, tremendous discounting for sure, which will be, good for the consumer. However, we've also got almost 20 million people out of work at this point, who are at least filing for unemployment. And I will say, that number that we talk about when they talk about filing for unemployment, it's a little bit of a difficult number to really quantify accurately. And the reason I say that is there are some people who have a reduction in hours who have filed for unemployment, and it doesn't necessarily mean that they are going 100% without, but they are experiencing less of a paycheck today than they were 2 months ago. And I'm not trying to make light of that at all, but that is also different than somebody who is completely unemployed. And so one of the things that I haven't looked too much into yet is really kind of understanding the data around that unemployment number. How is that being made up of the people who are experiencing a reduction in hours versus the people who are 100% out of work? I've talked to several friends of mine. I'm sure all of you have as well. If watching this, you're not also just immediately affected by it. A lot of people have are kind of in this really tough situation. I know the United States IRS is talking about getting checks out. Some of those folks are going to be receiving things this month, but there's still an even greater number of people who are trying to bridge that gap between, how do you buy food, feed the family, pay rent. Nobody's really, filling up their car per se, but there's a lot of day-to-day expenses that we're just not taking care of right now. And so, I think at the moment, the help can't come soon enough. And so really hoping to see some turnaround there as it relates to that. So retailers are definitely one of those things that I think about. But then I also think about the many food service workers. Proud to say that my own organization is doing something to help contribute to improving the food service worker situation, and it's really nice to work for a company that is doing that. However, I mean, when I think about the number of restaurants, and I've talked to restaurant owners before, being in this consumer goods world that I'm in, no, there's a lot of restaurants out there that are chains. I know a lot of restaurants out there that are smaller non-chains, and those are really the ones that make up the majority of things that we do, or the customers that we service. And whether that was at Coca-Cola or even in the wine industry, those customers are hugely important to the overall business, not only because typically smaller businesses like your 1 and 2 person operations, from a pricing standpoint, I'm going to talk from a standpoint of Coca-Cola here for a moment. From a pricing standpoint, you typically got higher revenues out of those customers, primarily because they didn't have the buying capacity of a Darden restaurant chain, or McDonald's or somebody like that, who can really kind of push our margins down because they buy in such bulk, right? So you kind of make it up on volume. When you are a smaller restaurant, you tend to pay a little bit of a higher price. And, in this industry, when you have a multitude of smaller companies, that's really a big part of your margins and profitability. And so to see all of that, just kind of evaporate overnight, I talked previously about those businesses that they aren't bringing in revenue anymore, or they have very limited revenue. They're having a challenge meeting not only payroll, but also raw materials costs, right? You got to buy food, you got to buy product, you got to do all of the other things that run your business. And when your revenue is constricted and reduced dramatically, it makes it much more difficult to do those things. So all of those suppliers that deliver to those restaurants, all of those people who bring in those goods and services, they can no longer they're no longer doing that really at the capacity that they used to. And so again, I mean, there's just complete, kind of ripple effect everywhere I go. I look around, and when I say everywhere I go, like I'm going a lot of places, but nobody's going a lot of places right now. But when I sit there and I go through my head of, the businesses that are probably more affected versus less affected, I think about oftentimes the supplies that go into those businesses. So if you're a hair salon and you sell hair products, and you think about all the things that a hair salon uses, and then now that person who sold those goods to those locations is no longer selling those goods. I was informed today by a friend of mine who works in the aerospace industry, that they're no longer working with their organization, which is terrible. But the airline industry has been hurt or hit especially bad during this. Have another friend of mine who does aerospace maintenance. So actually, come to think of it, both of my friends are kind of in that aerospace maintenance world. But one of them works at a hub and does a lot of avionics work and repair. And haven't checked in with him specifically to say, hey, just curious how the industry is doing. But that industry has definitely been hurt quite a bit. Have some friends of mine in the film business, and that work is just completely dried up. As a matter of fact, I'm hoping to try and get someone on from that industry in one of my little chats here soon. So these are going to get hopefully more interesting. Having dialogue with somebody else is always much nicer than me just kind of talking to the camera. I don't mind it, but it's always nice to have somebody to bounce ideas off of and just kind of, take a deep dive and explore stuff a little bit more. So, but I do want to talk to them because that industry has been, incredibly affected. And, I know there are some people out there who probably look at, more of the top end celebrities, the people who, make a little bit more money at this. But, behind those people are literally thousands of others who aren't bringing in necessarily of that level of income, right? And so all those people who work behind the scenes, who are doing the work to set up the shot, to get everything ready, the production assistants and the PAs, in and among themselves. I mean, it's kind of a lower on the totem pole role within that industry. They work incredibly long hours. They work incredibly hard. They do a lot of stuff to keep productions running. And when I think about those roles, they're not making anything right now, right? So that all of that is just not so great. So I'm hoping to get some or a couple folks from that industry, because I would love to just kind of dive in and understand what are folks doing right now to keep busy and also bring in revenue. So anyway, lots and lots of different things that are going on. And, one of the things that we are seeing, at least in the beer, liquor, wine industry, is while there has been a reduction in consumption in like restaurant channels, for example, we are seeing a higher volume in our on-premise business. And even though we do have some restaurants in many states that are now having that ability to sell wine for delivery, so if you're selling it out of they're selling it in a bottle, and in some cases, if they put a lid on it, right? So that's not too terribly bad, but we're seeing a lot of shift in distribution. Is it enough to move everything that was in restaurant over to a what we call the off-premise side of the business? No. We're still going to be experiencing those hits. I think if you're in this industry, and one of the things that's very interesting about the wine industry that is in contrast to the regular beverage industry, in the wine industry, I go back. So in the soda business, right, it's all about building brand, building loyalty, building relationships, and really kind of being sticky, right? Holding on to that customer for all you can. In the wine business, it's not that it isn't that. However, it's a lot more competitive. There's a lot more players. There's a lot of different brands and styles and approaches and all that other wonderful stuff. And that sense of variety kind of kills the loyalty, right? And so, in the soda business, I remember like we would win a contract with a big customer, and there, everybody would be, high-fiving each other, and it meant for the next 5 years we had all that business with that customer. In the wine business, I mean, first of all, you really fight. You really fight for those placements. And then when you get a placement, one of the things that you try to do is hold on to that. It's not uncommon in this industry to get a placement with a restaurant and not have it 3 months later. And it makes competing in this industry just so much different. One of the things too that I've always I've thought initially when I first came into this industry, like that is really odd. But now that I've been in it for a few years, and it's one of the things I've really come to love, is that there's a lot of sharing in this industry. There's a lot of people who help their neighbor out, or, it's not so competitive, cutthroat like the soda business is. It is much more of people sharing things, and you go taste your competitor's product because you want to see how they've done things, and you share thoughts, you share opinions. I'm not going to say there's no trash talking, but definitely not the cutthroat competitive spirit that there was in the consumer goods, because in that world it's all about like domination of shelf space and all that wonderful stuff. And now I will say this, probably in the bigger corporate wineries, it's a little more of that. But again, another reason why I kind of like the more smaller family owned companies, because there's much less of that. And I think overall, just the approach to things is a lot more. I don't want to say civil, because it's not like the soda industry was uncivil, but I think there's a little bit more of a kind of we're all in this together attitude, and so they try to do things a little bit more as a community, and it's something that, when I was living in Napa, living in the not in Napa, but up in the Bay Area. It was one of those things that we saw a lot. Something happened in the valley. There was kind of this coming together of the community, the wine community, and people kind of pulled together. And I'm also seeing a lot of that in the restaurant industry. And I guess bottom line is it's very humbling and very nice to see a community around an industry, and rather than, and it's funny because I've been to the trade shows and things where we had the Coke booth, and then down the hall was the Pepsi booth, and you just kind of like stare each other down from across the room, but you don't really get as much of that. So anyway, the as I kind of close out here, and this is really just kind of getting me back into the habit of doing this. I'm going to try and on a regular basis come on for 10-15 minutes a night, close out the evening, recap some things that are happening in my industry and around this world of business. Sometimes it's a little bit harder for me to do this because sometimes I'm teaching at this time of day, but one way or another, I will try and make it online. Welcome you guys to come back. I can't give you an exact time of when these are going to happen. Hopefully I'll narrow in on something like that, but I'm going to try to do these things a little bit more regularly. Encourage you guys to jump on. Sorry, the content and information wasn't as wonderful today, but hope to have some more interesting folks on down the road. I'm bugging people as we speak to say, hey, come on, let's, have a glass of wine. So hopefully I'll showcase a glass of wine each night as well. And, kind of let you guys know how things are going. And it might not always be wine. Could be some other beverage, but something in the beverage space, usually an adult beverage, I will say. All right, folks. Well, thanks much. Thanks for checking this out. Hope that you guys are enjoying your time with your family. Hope you're enjoying the work that you are doing. And even if you find that you are not as engaged in your normal profession as you normally would be, that you are finding something to kind of fill that void, that you're finding something that is going to help perpetuate you. There's an amazing amount of things that happen during times like this. And what is always most exciting is when somebody gets this wild harebrained idea and says, they get some idea that says, hey, this could be a business, right? So hoping we have some entrepreneurs out there that we're going to see some new and exciting things come out of all of this. And those people, rather than being an employee, will become an employer as they pursue their new entrepreneurial idea. So that would be awesome. All right, folks, thanks much. Have a good one. I will check you all tomorrow. See ya.